Dear students, I am S.V. Patil sir, National Faculty on Modern Indian History. Today I am here before you to guide you regarding UPSC mains examination, and I will be discussing about some important key topics on which you can expect questions in the coming mains examination, and discussion will be oriented towards the analysis of the facts and how to write the answers. On that I will be focusing, and I welcome you for the discussion today. Yes, dear UPSC main students, I welcome you for today's discussion on modern Indian history. We will be discussing various topics keeping in mind the mains examination. Today I will be discussing with the first question, most likely question and the expected topic for the exam. And the question goes like this: discuss about the internal and external factors that led to the rise of British Empire in India. So this is, according to me, the first expected questions for your UPSC mains examination. And if this kind of question is asked, first what you have to do, understand the two keywords that are given in the question. Number one, internal factors, and number two, external factors. So two things you have to remember and you have to explain it properly in the answer that led to the rise of the British Empire in this country, right? So if you are already studied and well aware of the developments in the modern Indian history, you will be knowing what are the important internal factors. Means what are the factors that were present in India, inside our country, that facilitated the Britishers, especially the East India Company, to establish their empire slowly but surely in this country. Now to take a quick look at what are the internal factors. Number one, the huge wealth that was there in this country, right? The Europeans, particularly the Britishers, why they came to India, you know very well that our country was loaded with different kinds of wealth, like the natural resources, the forest wealth, the mineral wealth, and the traditional wealth, what we call as the gold, the diamond, the jewelry, and a lot of things. And in fact, India was called the Sone ki Chidiya, means the treasure land. When Vasco da Gama landed in Calicut 1498, he says, "At last I reached the treasure island." So the huge wealth that was already there lying in this country, that is a very important internal factor that's going to be responsible for the rise of the empire in the country. Suppose if that wealth was not there, then these people would not have arrived to India and our history story would have been different. So in the first part, you have to discuss about the wealth that was there abundantly, fabulously in the country. Then second thing you have to highlight is there was disunity among the Indian rulers. Indian subcontinent was ruled by more than 500 princely rulers, both Hindus and Muslim, and some other community rulers were also there. But largely it was Muslim and Indian who were ruling this country from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. So 500 plus principalities, large and small both, powerful and weak, that were there across the subcontinent. But what was the irony? The biggest thing was there was no unity among these Indian rulers, whether it is in North India or South India or Central India or even in Western India. So there was no unity among these rulers, and as a result there were infighting, rivalry, animosities, and hatred among the rulers themselves that had led to a lot of wars within the country. Almost you can call it as the civil war or internal strife. And when there is huge wealth coupled with disunity, disorder, and disintegration, looming large in a country like India, obviously it is a golden opportunity for these Europeans to come here, capture us, win over us, and ultimately establish their empire. So you have to discuss about the internal rivalry that was going on within our own rulers. The typical example you can quote is that of the Carnatic Wars. Why the Carnatic Wars were fought, you are aware of those things. Especially the Second Carnatic War. The Second Carnatic War, that was happened in the country between 1749 to 1754. It was all about the rivalry between our own rulers within the same dynasty. For example, in Hyderabad, the Nizam of Hyderabad had died, and two contenders were struggling to become the next successor, Nasir Jung and Muzaffar Jung. And you know that how they were fighting with each other. And this led to the interference of these colonial powers, foreign powers, both British and French. And you know the whole story that Robert Clive supported Nasir Jung, and Dupleix of the French East India Company supported Muzaffar Jung. And finally, at the end of the hostilities, the Britishers are going to get the victory, and Robert Clive is going to be successful in establishing his control over Hyderabad, and Dupleix is going to be defeated after the killing of Muzaffar Jung in the battlefield. So this example you can quote as an illustration that how Indian rulers were disunited and quarreling among themselves. You can also give the example of the Carnatic. In the same Second Carnatic War, there is another hostility going on another stage that is called Carnatic. And after the death of the Nawab of Carnatic, two people started contending with each other, Anwaruddin and Chanda Sahib. These two people start quarreling over the succession issue, and you all know very well that Anwaruddin is going to be supported by Robert Clive, and Chanda Sahib is going to be supported by Dupleix of the French East India Company. And the hostilities continue for a long time, but there is a landmark event, a strategic event known as the Siege of Arcot. The Siege of Arcot by Robert Clive changed the entire game scenario, and Dupleix' game plan was completely smashed. And in the battle, Chanda Sahib was killed by the British troops, and also the Raja of Travancore also was there. That is again another example, because there was hostility between the King of Travancore and Chanda Sahib, who were arch rivals. So this episode, and after that the Second Carnatic War will be over, and in both the places the Britishers are going to keep their people, their own stooges on the throne. Like in Hyderabad, they are going to put Salabat Jung, and in Carnatic they are going to put Muhammad Ali as the new Nawab of Carnatic. So this episode, which I just told you in brief, is an example to tell how the rivalry among the Indian rulers, whether in Hyderabad or in Carnatic, how it led to the conquering of the territory by these vested colonial interests, especially the Britishers. And if you give the reverse logic, suppose if our rulers were united and they were not fighting among themselves, then perhaps our history would have been different, and these people would not have captured India. Means the lesson of unity you have to focus in our answer. Lack of unity and full of animosity and rivalry, hatred among our rulers, that is going to pave the way for the Britishers to establish their empire. And this is one important topic we have to explain in our answer. And another point you have to note under the internal factors is the element of sedition, the element of treachery, the element of conspiracy among our own people. Because our own people were not united and they were not showing their complete loyalty towards the nation, and they were having their own vested interest, selfish interest, for the sake of which they were ready to sacrifice. They were ready to sacrifice the nation for their personal benefits, selfish benefits. And the typical example you can quote here to substantiate your answer is the Battle of Plassey. You have to write about the Battle of Plassey 1757. How Siraj-ud-Dawla was defeated because of the conspiracy, the plot prepared by, hatched by Robert Clive, but it was well supported by, rather fully supported by Mir Jafar, the chief of the commander of the Nawab's army, Mir Jafar, and also his three good friends who were known as the bankers of Bengal, very rich merchants of Bengal at that time, Jagat Seth, Rai Durlabh and Manik Chand. These three fellows, they connived with the British East India Company. Even Mir Jafar also supported Robert Clive openly to defeat their own Nawab. Siraj-ud-Dawla was not defeated by outsiders, he was defeated by his own commander Mir Jafar. And our history takes a turning point after the Battle of Plassey. And you all know that Battle of Plassey is called as the foundation of the British Empire in India, and Robert Clive is called the founder of the empire. But what is the reason? The reason is the Battle of Plassey, or rather the conspiracy of Plassey. I don't even want to call it as battle, it is actually the conspiracy hatched by Robert Clive with the support of Mir Jafar. So this element of what is called betrayal, the element of betrayal, the element of disloyalty, the element of greed, vested interest, power hungriness by our own people led to the rise of the British Empire in India. And unfortunately, it will be painful for me to make a comment that in the history of India, we come across more of traitors and less of patriots. More number of traitors, more number of Mir Jafars and Mir Sadiqs, rather than the patriots who were there to die for India, fight for India. Their number is less. Their number is less. So therefore, in the analysis of your answer, you have to select those incidents which prove conspiracies. I'll give you one more very interesting example as internal factor. Why the Marathas were liquidated? You know that why the Marathas were liquidated. They were very strong people. In fact, the Maratha Mandal was very powerful, and even the Mughal emperor, when Aurangzeb was emperor, he was afraid of it. He was afraid to enter the Deccan plateau because of the presence of Marathas. But up to 1800, things went on well. But after the death of Nana Fadnavis in 1800 AD, the Maratha Mandal, it got disintegrated. The 5 dynasties in the Maratha Mandal, they started conflicting, fighting among themselves, like the Peshwas, the Sindhyas, the Bhonsles, the Holkar and the Gaekwad. These 5 dynasties of the Maratha Mandal, they started fighting and quarreling among themselves. That led to the weakening and disintegration of the Maratha Mandal. And what is the result? The result is 4 wars. You have to briefly write about the 4 wars. They are called Anglo-Maratha Wars. Anglo-Maratha War 1, 2, 3 and 4. You know that totally 4 wars are there. All these 4 Anglo-Maratha wars, they are nothing but the evidence. They are the proof that how the Marathas were disunited and they started siding with the Britishers to defeat the other dynasty. You know, they themselves became the reason for their own downfall. I don't say that the Britishers defeated the Marathas. Rather, you can write the answer that Marathas themselves defeated the Marathas instead of saying that Britishers defeated the Marathas. So this is another example you can quote to say that how internal disunity led to the rise of the empire in the country. And one more evidence point I will suggest you to include in the answer, the Anglo-Mysore War. Another example, Anglo-Mysore Wars. You know that totally 4 wars have taken place, 1, 2, 3 and 4. In that, the first 2 wars were done with Hyder Ali. Britishers made war with Hyder Ali, and you all know the first Anglo-Mysore War was fantastically won by Hyder Ali. I think you are all aware of that. Why Hyder Ali was successful in the first Anglo-Mysore War? Because these other 2 fellows had not supported the British. Who are those 2 people? You are aware of that. If you have already studied history, you know it already. The Nizam of Hyderabad and the Peshwa, Bajirao. Peshwa the Bajirao and the Nizam of Hyderabad did not support the East India Company in the first Anglo-Mysore War. That is the reason that Hyder Ali could easily defeat the British East India Company army in the famous Battle of Dindigal. The Battle of Dindigal, you know that. You can also quote the reverse example. Why the same Hyder Ali was defeated in the second Anglo-Mysore War. Second Anglo-Mysore War. You know what is the reason why he was defeated? Because in the second Anglo-Mysore War, these 2 fellows, they supported the Britishers. That is, the Nizam of Hyderabad and Bajirao, the first, the Peshwa. So they supported East India Company because their common enemy was Hyder Ali. Hyder Ali was a common enemy for both of them, and they thought that if we support the Britishers, we can easily liquidate Hyder Ali so that they can be happy. And that is the reason they supported the East India Company, and you know the result. In the second Anglo-Mysore War, Hyder Ali was completely defeated and a humiliating treaty was imposed on him known as the Treaty of Mangalore. The Treaty of Mangalore 1784 was imposed on Hyder Ali. So these 2 examples why I told you is when you are writing the answer, what are the internal factors, these examples you have to quote. You have to quote and narrate these incidents briefly, that this internal animosity, rivalry, hatred and selfish interest, power greediness, disloyalty, supporting the Britishers and working against their own Nawabs and their own rulers, what we call as a stabbing in the back. It is called stabbing in the back. Our own people stabbed us in the back for their own vested interest, selfish interest. So that actually led to the conquest of India. I never say that Britishers conquered India. I say India helped the Britishers to conquer us. I think that would be better way of putting the answer. Don't say that Britishers captured India. I don't agree that statement. I say Indians helped the Britishers to capture India because the fault is on our side. The fault is not on the British, the fault is on our shoulders because our rulers never learnt the very simple lesson that unity is a strength. You know that unity is strength. As long as we are united, no one can touch us, no one can shape us, But our rulers, for whatever reason, religious reason, caste reason, cultural reason, or economic reason, political reason, be it whatever the reason, for their own reasons, our rulers never thought that we belong to one nation. So this lack of unity, lack of comprehensive approach, lack of we feeling among our rulers, that is the central idea as far as internal factors are concerned that led to the rise of British Empire in our country. So in the first part of the answer, you have to explain all these points which I told you just now as internal factors. You call them as internal factors. Now we'll draw your attention to the second part of the answer, that is called external factors. Make the title external factors. External means what? Outside India. Be clear, outside India. These things did not happen here. They happened far away, somewhere away from India. They are called as external factors. Now what are the external factors that led to the rise of the British Empire in India is, number one, some of the wars that took place in Europe. The wars or the hostilities that took place in Europe between England and France that led to the rise of the British Empire in our country. And two important things I would like to draw your attention for that is, one is the Austrian War of Succession. One is the Austrian War of Succession. And you know that when that Austrian War of Succession started in 1746. 1746, the War of Austrian Succession took place, and that led to the war in Europe. It led to the war between England and France in Europe, and it is famous in the world history as the Austrian War of Succession. But as you are already aware of the things, this Austrian War of Succession had its adverse impact on India, especially in the Carnatic. So the impact of the Austrian War of Succession that led to the outbreak of the first Carnatic War. The first Carnatic War took place in India in the same time frame, 1746 to 1748 AD, between the British East India Company and the French East India Company in our country. And a huge battle took place between the Britishers and French near Madras, in which the French got the victory, because the French army was led by Dupleix, the governor of French East India Company, and he defeated the British army, and even he captured the Fort St. George, the first fort that was built by the Britishers in India. So Fort St. George was captured by Dupleix, and British army was completely defeated in the that war known as the First Carnatic War. So this hostility between the Britishers and French is caused not by internal things. The point you have to highlight in the answer is, here the reason is outside India. Means you can also write it in reverse logic. If the Austrian War of Succession has not taken place, right, then this Carnatic War would not have broken out in India, because there is a interlinking is there, direct connection is there. Because the war started in Austria, these people started fighting on the Indian subcontinent. Suppose if that war has not taken place there, then our history would have been different, right? So this is one example you can quote, that how external things are going to contribute for the rise of the British power in our country. This is one example. Then the second example you can quote is that of the Third Carnatic War. The Third Carnatic War also started because of external factor, not by internal factors, external factors. And you know what is that external factor? One more round of hostility started in Europe, and it is popularly known as 7 Years War. I hope you all remember it. 7 Years War started in Europe between England and France, and the war started in 1756 and continued up to 1763. 1756 to 1763, the third and final Carnatic War starts in Europe, and the reason for that hostility also is known to you very well. The reason was the War of Succession over some of the disputed territories in South America. There were some disputed territories in South America, some islands, on which both England and France both were claiming their power, their authority, and that led to the outbreak of the 7 Years War. But this 7 Years War that went on in Europe, it had its effect on India. The shadow of the war fell on the subcontinent, especially in the Carnatic, and the third Carnatic War is going to start because of this Austrian, what's called the 7 Years War. And here in India, these two East India companies, they also started fighting very severely in our soil, on the Indian soil, and that is famous in history as Third Carnatic War. It is known as Third Carnatic War between 1756 to 1760. And here one important point you have to remember while writing the answers is, in Europe the 7 Years War ended in 1763 with the Treaty of Paris. It is called Treaty of Paris 1763, after which the French are going to remain as a neutral power, as a mercantile power, and now they are not going to interfere in the politics or war activities on the Indian soil, and they are going to confine themselves to Pondicherry as their capital, and Mahe and Karaikal became their trading centers. You are knowing all these things, right? But its impact fell on India, and these two East India companies started fighting on the Indian soil. But the difference is, in India, this war, that is the Third Carnatic War, it ended in 1760. 1760 with the fierce battle, which is very historic also, known as the Battle of Wandiwash. The Battle of Wandiwash 1760, which is the decisive battle between the Britishers and French in India. Britishers and French in India, and in that, you know what happened? The Britishers completely defeated the French army. They were defeated on the land, and the French army was led by Count de Lally. The commander was Count de Lally and Colonel Bussy, Bussy. Count de Lally and Colonel Bussy, they were completely defeated by the Britishers, and the British army was led by General Arcot. General Arcot led the British army, and the battle is famous as the Battle of Wandiwash 1760, and there the Britishers got the thumping victory. It was a decisive thumping victory, and it was a decisive battle for the French in India. And not only that, in the Third Carnatic War, for the first time, the naval power was also used. And you know that the British Navy was led by Lord Nelson, a seasoned expert on the seas. In fact, he is called by the historians as Lord of the Seas. Lord Nelson led the British Navy, and the French Navy was led by La Bourdinge. The French commander La Bourdinge led the French Navy, and here also in the battle the French Navy was defeated, the French commander was defeated, and the Britishers smiled with victory here also, in the naval fight also, and on the land also. So this example, the example that I explained to you now, is a typical case of external factor. Actually, the fight was going on between England and France in Europe, but its impact fell on India, and these two East India companies, they clashed in the Carnatic region, especially near Madras, and in that battle, finally, the Britishers got victory and the French were completely defeated. And under the Treaty of Paris, 1763, the French were reduced only to a mercantile power. After this, the French are not going to interfere in any Indian political internal issues. And the entire India is going to slipping into the hands of the Britishers, and the Britishers remained the sole power, the sole single supreme power on the Indian soil. So these two examples which I told you is a proof to say that external factors also led to the rise of British Empire in India. Otherwise, if these developments have not taken place in Europe, then perhaps here the developments in India would have been totally different, right? And apart from this, you can also quote some other things, like one example I will give you. The Battle of Armada, Spanish Armada, 1688. The battle took place known as the Battle of Spanish Armada, ARMADA, 1688. So in that Battle of Spanish Armada, the Britishers are going to crush the Dutch, the Spains and the Portuguese. The Dutch, the Spain and the Portuguese are going to be subdued in this battle known as the Battle of Spanish Armada. It is the battle itself is known like that. In that, the Britishers are going to gain the victory in Europe, and that event, that incident made the Britishers supreme not only in Europe but also in India. Actually, they defeated their rivals in Europe, like the Danes, that is Denmark, then the Dutch and the Portuguese. So they defeated their rivals in Europe in this battle, but indirectly it paved the way for establishing their empire on the Indian soil. So these major events from outside, that is in Europe, they are going to be a reason for establishing their empire in India. And also one more last thing you can remember as far as the external factor is concerned is the element of the superiority of the army. The Britishers were having superior army, especially artillery force. The main strong point of the Britishers was artillery force, and by using that artillery force, the Britishers could easily defeat the Indian rulers, whether it is Battle of Plassey or the Battle of Buxar, 1764, or even the Carnatic Wars. You can quote the example of Carnatic Wars, Anglo-Mysore Wars, even Anglo-Maratha Wars, whatever war you can quote. Why the Britishers were successful? Because their army was very powerful, superior, especially their weapons, modern weapons that they were having, the powerful artillery gun that they were having. So that led to their what is called success and victory in the battlefield. On the other hand, the Indian rulers, that their army was not as powerful compared to the British, because our rulers were using the conventional weapons. Indians were using traditional weapons like bows, arrows, sword, and the spears and all that, and we were not having such a powerful artillery guns which the Britishers were having. So that made a very big difference why they got success and why we got defeat in the war field. And even one more last point also you can remember, what led to that superiority is these Britishers, when they came to India, they were well supported by their home governments. This point you have to highlight in the answer. They were supported by their home governments in England. The British government in England, including the Queen Elizabeth I, you know that they supported the activities of the East India Company in India. And there was complete support and cooperation from their side for all the activities that the Britishers were doing in the country. And for that one example I would like to quote for you, which you have to write it in the answer, is when initially our Mughal Emperor Jahangir was not ready to give written permission for trade and commerce for the East India Company in India, you know what the Queen did? Elizabeth I, the Queen of England at that time, she sent her royal representative. You know that he was not representative of the company. He was a representative of the British Crown in England, and I hope all of you remember his name, Sir Thomas Rowe. Sir Thomas Rowe, who was a representative of the British Queen, he came to India in 1615 and gave a letter to the Mughal Emperor Jahangir saying that I have come from the Queen of England and she wanted us to talk to you and give us permission for trade and commerce in India. And our emperor, after seeing that letter by the Queen, readily agreed to give the grant for carrying on trade and commerce in the country. And that is how the British government, the royal family, including the royal family, they actively supported the company right from the day one. Right from the day one, they were encouraging the East India Company, supporting the company. Suppose, I'll give the reverse analysis. If the British Queen or the King or the British government in general had not supported the East India Company, then I think the East India Company would not have easily come to India, settled down here and established their empire. Whether it is Surat or Bombay or Madras or Hooghly River, Calcutta, whatever the place, easily they would not have established. Because you need to get support from your home government. It's called home government. If your home government does not support you, then you cannot venture into a foreign territory, a foreign land like India, where you don't know their language. You know that these points also you have to write in the answer. Britishers were not knowing our language. They were not knowing our culture. They are not knowing about our cultural lifestyle and all that. So completely they were alien to us, foreign to us. But still, how come they came here, settled down here and expanded their trading activity, and how they slowly established themselves and raised their empire. So for this, I think the one strong factor which you have to highlight in the answer is the continuous and constant support. Remember these two words. Continuous and consistent supports given by the British government for the East India Company in India. And that is directly the reason why they were able to establish their empire in India. And I will give the last analysis. I will give contrast example of French East India Company. You know that French East India Company was established around 1670 AD in France, and I hope you are all aware of that. French East India Company was not a private limited company, unlike the British. British was a private company, right? But the French East India Company was not private. It was established by the government of France. And you know who was the founder of the French East India Company? His name is D. Colbert. D-E-C-O-L-B-E-R-T. D. Colbert, who was the commerce minister. in the government of France, he established the French East India Company. Therefore, French company was a government company, official company, not a private one. And as a result, what made the difference? I hope you know what made the difference. The French East India Company did not have the freedom, autonomy to take the decision as it likes or as the situation warrants. And what is the best example, context you have to quote? The best context you have to quote is the Second Carnatic War. During the Second Carnatic War, actually Dupleix was running short of the forces. He was running short of the forces, armed forces. And he wrote letter. Dupleix wrote letter to his parent country that send me more army, more forces. Otherwise I cannot tackle the Britishers, especially Robert Clive, the most intelligent fellow of the East India Company. But unfortunately, the French government did not support Dupleix. Although he requested, the additional forces were not sent, additional ammunition was not sent, additional arms and ammunitions were not sent by the French government on time. On time, when it was warranted, it was not given. And very important thing, Dupleix was not given free hand in taking the decisions. Whatever decision Dupleix wanted to take, every time he has to consult his parent government in France. Only after the French government gives the clearance, then he would have to move ahead to take the decision. And you know that in those days, communication was very slow. Because now we are living in high-tech digital world, communication is very fast. Say I am sitting in Bangalore and you are getting my classes in Delhi. So it is possible now. It is possible now technically. But in those days, communication was very, very poor. Communication was very slow. And you know, by doing the correspondence from Carnatic to the government of France, the letters have to go, they have to read, it has to be discussed in the French Parliament, approved by the French government, then the orders have to be issued to the governor in India. So it is to take a very long time. It's a very cumbersome process, right? Very lot of time was involved in the decision-making process, which actually hampered Dupleix. The main handicap of Dupleix was not that he was powerful. In fact, he was more powerful, more ambitious than Robert Clive. No doubt about it. If you make a comparison, Dupleix was much more strong, powerful and ambitious than Robert Clive. But why Dupleix could not get success? Because he did not get the support from his home government. Their own French government did not encourage him, did not support him, cooperate with him on time, especially in sending the forces and liaising. And that is the reason why Dupleix was a failure, especially in the Second Carnatic War. The reason for the failure is the French government let him down. It did not support him. And even Dupleix was a bit disappointed. He was very unhappy that I could not conquer India, because he had come to India with a dream that I want to establish French Empire. But because of the lack of support, timely support and cooperation by his own home government in France, Dupleix became helpless. He became weak, he became helpless, and that is the reason they could not win the Carnatic Wars. And finally, the Britishers captured it. So with this, what I would like to tell you finally is, when we analyze internal things on one side and external factors on the other side, which I explained you so far, things will be very clear that why the Britishers were able to establish their empire in India. It is because of the combination of these two factors. You should not say that only because of one factor they established their empire, like internal or even external. So in concluding your answer, when you are concluding your answer, you have to write the answer like this. both due to the internal factors that were present in India and also external factors that were outside in India, outside India, especially in Europe. Things that happened in Europe, things that happened in England, things that happened in France. These things are going to make an impact on the developments that occurred on the Indian soil, and finally the Britishers are going to emerge successful, victorious in winning the wars, not only in Europe but also in India. And the Britishers ultimately become successful in suppressing, eliminating the French from the Indian political scenario, especially after the Treaty of Paris 1763. So in this way, finally, I would like to conclude the answer like this. Both internal and external factors, which I explained to you, discussed with you, they led to the establishment and also the rise of the British Empire in India during 15th and 16th century. During 15th and 16th century AD, how the Britishers were able to do this, and all these events, not that you are not aware of that. As students for UPSC exam, you already know. You know about Carnatic Wars, you know about Battle of Plassey, you know about Battle of Buxar, you know about the Anglo-Mysore Wars, you know about Anglo-Maratha Wars. All these things you already know. But how you have to take the points, how you have to selectively pick them, and how you have to correlate that event to the answer writing, that all you need to learn. I don't say that you are not aware of all these developments, because by the time you have clear prelims, it is 100% clear that you are already aware of these things. They are not new for you. But what I discuss with you now in this discussion is, I just told you what are internal factors, what are external factors, and how you have to list them in a chronological order. You just mentioned the points in the chronological order, internally what happened, and also chronologically outside events in Europe, what happened, you list out them and you explain them briefly. Don't go in full detail, because you are supposed to finish your answer in 250 words, right? So you explain the things very briefly, make a write-up. I have given the input. In the discussion, I have given you the input, insight and analysis. What I have given you is input, facts, then analysis, how things happen, and insight means deeper truths in the incident. Three things I have given you, and on that basis you have to write up your own answer, and keep on answer writing is very important. And when you are writing the answers, ensure that try to use standard word, standard language. The standard of the language should be a bit high. Don't use colloquial words. Don't use colloquial, common man's words. Try to use high profile words, and try to use even technical words. For example, colonial clash. Don't say Britishers and French have fought. You try to use a standard word, colonial conflict, because both were colonial powers, right? Or you can also use the captions like the struggle of the Europeans in the south for supremacy. Struggle of the Europeans for supremacy in the south. It is nothing but the Carnatic Wars. So try to use technical words, standard words, and make sentence formation as effectively as possible. For that, I suggest you to read NCERT books. Especially for this, you have to refer NCERT textbook 12th standard on modern India, edited by Dr. Bipin Chandra. So that book will give you a clear analysis and a factual analysis of the things. What all you have to do is take up the points that are relevant for your question. Because the question asked is, what are the internal and external factors? So only write about internal factors, first part, external factors, second part, and establish proof that this is how the British Empire was established in India. Okay, and you can see some model answers also. You know that a lot of literature is available in the market. Many people have come with publications. You can also refer their answers. I don't say that don't read. So it's a very ocean, big area. You can read some good model answers that are available in the market and published by various agencies. You can even go through their answers. And I don't know how many of you are aware of these things. Topper's profile. I advise you to refer IAS Topper's profile, Ranker's profile, which is available in the internet. So you go there, read their model answers, how they have written the answers for similar type of questions, and just go through the previous question papers on the first 2 chapters. Actually, this question is asked from the 2nd chapter, the rise of British Empire in India. So you just check the previous question papers asked by the UPSC, what type of question they have asked on the rise of British Empire in India, and try to list out those points and then keep your answers ready. Okay. So with this, I would like to conclude my first discussion with you today. As an introductory question I took, that how the British Empire was established in this country because of internal and external factors. And every day I will be doing this regularly and giving you the insight into other aspects. Some other important topics are there. I will be discussing with you online, and later on it will be uploaded to you by the institute, and you will be seeing my video lectures discussion on the mains. So this is the first question I just discussed with you today, and in the coming days I will be discussing many more questions on modern India, and I will be giving you the model answer and inputs, how to write the answer on some selected topics. And I will be asking you the questions, and I will be able to explaining them how to write the answer. And I'm sure that this discussion will help you. I'm confident that this discussion will help you in writing a better answer, a good answer, effective answer, if this type of questions are asked for you by the UPSC in the examination. Okay. So with this, I will conclude my discussion on first topic, first question on modern India, and in the next session, second recording, I will be coming up with a new question, new topic, and I will be discussing with you. Thank you, and I wish you all the best in the coming mains examination. Thank you.